Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Namo Shripadaya Krishna Krishna Guru Vishnu Devata Swami Rama Vishnu Krishna Krishna Guru Vishnu Devata Vedanta Syamantaka Namaste Saraswati Rama Pracharya Vishnu Shrimad Pashtara Vishkarani Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Vedanta Syamantaka Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare Bhagavate Vachala. Hare Krishna. Welcome back to our discussion on Vedanta Syamantaka. Is it clear? The audio is clear, right? Is it loud enough?
Yeah, it's loud enough.
Okay, fine. So, till yesterday, we have discussed the various aspects of Ishvara, and we also saw that there are different forms of the Lord. There is 800 form, 400 form, 200 forms. So we discussed all that. And before that, of course, we discussed about the Saguna and Nirguna Brahman. So today we are going to discuss the last section of this chapter, this chapter 2, Ishvara. So this is in relation to the consorts of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we will see what Srila Radha Damodar Goswami writes. So he says, the Supreme Person should be known as the husband of Goddess Lakshmi and Goddess Saraswati, as stated in the Shukla Yajurveda, Vajasneyi Samhita. Shrishchate Lakshmishcha Patnyau. Shri and Lakshmi are your wives. So actually in Narada Pancharatra, there might be a question as to how Saraswati is the wife of the Supreme Lord. In Narada Pancharatra, it is stated that Saraswati Bharati cha Yogena Siddhi Yogini Bharati Brahma Patni cha Vishnu Patni Saraswati. By the order of Lord Hari, Saraswati Devi accepted two forms. In one form, she was Saraswati, the perfect mystic yogini, and in another form, she was Bharati. Bharati became the wife of Brahma, and Saraswati became the wife of Vishnu. So this is proper understanding. And Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati also said that there are two Saraswatis. There is Divya Saraswati and there is this Saraswati within this material world. So the Divya Saraswati is the wife of Lord Vishnu, and her manifestation within this material world takes the form who gets married to Lord Brahma. So when in Hindu religion, when they do this Saraswati Puja, they are actually worshipping Saraswati within this material form, which is Bharati, it's mentioned here. But we worship the Divya Saraswati. We worship the knowledge potency of the Lord. Okay. The texts belonging to the Atharva Veda also confirm Kamala Pataye Namaha. From Gopal Tapani Upanishad, obeisances unto Govinda, the husband of Lakshmi. Rama Manasa Hamsaya Govindaya Namo Namaha. Okay, this is also from Gopal Tapani Upanishad. Obeisances unto Govinda, who is like a swan in Lakshmi's heart, which is like the Manasa lake. Rama Dharaya Ramaya. From Rama Tapani Upanishad. Obeisances unto Lord Ram, who supports Goddess Lakshmi. According to the commentators, in the previous sentence, the name Shri mentioned means Goddess Saraswati, and the name Lakshmi means Rama, the goddess of fortune. And this Srila Baldev Vidyabhushan, in his introduction to his commentary on Vedanta Sutra 3340, he also writes, some say Shri means Rama and Lakshmi means divine wealth, whereas others say Shri is speech, which basically refers to Saraswati, and Lakshmi is Rama. Okay. Now, Srila Radha Damodar Goswami put forth an argument from the other side. Okay. from the impersonalistic side. And he says, someone may argue, according to the Shruti, Neha Nanasti Kinchana, it cannot be accepted that within Brahman there is difference in the form of Lakshmi and so on. But accepting Maya, Brahman's form is that of pure goodness, and it is only with this form that Lakshmi Saraswati can be connected. Okay, so to understand this, we have to go back to our discussion on the subject of Vishesha. Okay, so according to Vishesha, we saw that the Lord is there, okay, and he has qualities and attributes like knowledge, bliss, and so on, and his Shakti is also there. And Vishesha, the concept itself, means that although there is actually no difference, there is factually no difference, but there is conventional or functional difference which is being explained in the Shastra. Till that point it is fine, and after that we also discussed that Brahman is not impersonal. There is no Saguna Brahman or Nirguna Brahman. Nirguna Brahman also has transcendental form, and we also saw how the form of the Lord is transcendental. And these forms manifest in different ways, 800 forms, 400 forms, 200 form, like that. But here we see the references which just now we discussed. It is mentioned that Lakshmi is the wife of the Lord. Okay, so here the impersonalist is not able to accept that, because till this point the arguments were made that okay, knowledge potency, bliss potency, these qualities of the Lord may be accepted as Vishesha. But then when the Shastra speaks that the wife of the Lord is there, that's, for them it's taking things a bit too much. Okay, because the consideration of wife means that she is supposed to be subordinate to the husband, she should be serving the husband, like that. But then we also say that this Neha Nanasti Kinchana, also this particular section from the Shruti is very famous. It's actually one of the Mahavakyas which Shankaracharya propagated. So this section, this Neha Nanasti Kinchana, was quoted during that time also. I don't know whether you remember or not, but it was quoted at that time with respect to Vishesha, and said there is no difference between Brahman. So how can Brahman have qualities? So in that context it was quoted, but then it was refuted. We discussed that. And here the same point is being quoted. Neha Nanasti Kinchana. So how can the Lord have wives who are in the definition of a wife? They are supposed to be subordinate. They are supposed to serve the Lord, and they are considered as a Shakti of the Lord. So how to understand that? So therefore, because the concept of wife, which is taking the concept of Vishesha a bit too far, according to them, what they say is that Brahman's form, by accepting Maya, Brahman's form is that of pure goodness, which means they are talking about Saguna Brahman here, and it is only with this form that Lakshmi and Saraswati can be connected. So, okay, the Shastra is speaking about wife. I can understand about the qualities of the Lord, like knowledge, bliss, and opulences and other things. Even up to the form of the Lord, I can understand. They are all Vishnu Tattva, they are non-different from each other. But when it comes to wife, which means we are talking about a female form, right? We are talking distinctions of male and female and so on. When we are talking about those forms, then we cannot accept that it's all based on the concept of Vishesha. There must be some, the wives of the Lord are being mentioned here, which basically means that Saguna Brahman is what is being referred to and not Nirguna Brahman. So this is the argument. Then the response is that this idea is mistaken. The superior energy exists within the Supreme Brahman as non-different from his Swarupa, just as fire and heat, as stated in the Shruti. Right? Just as fire is there, and concomitant with the fire is heat also, and light also. So just fire and heat, they exist together. We cannot say that fire is there but heat is not there. Or we cannot say fire is there but then light is not there. So whenever there is fire, the actual manifestation of fire, there is light also, and there is definitely heat. So similarly, the Supreme Lord, he always exists with his energies. So that is the response that we are giving. And it's mentioned in Shvetashvatara Upanishad, Parasya Shaktir Vividhaiva Shruyate Swabhaviki Jnana Bala Kriyacha. It is heard from the scriptures that the Supreme has multifarious intrinsic superior energies in the form of knowledge, power and action. So we saw this quote also before. It must be accepted that Goddess Lakshmi and Goddess Saraswati are the very same superior energy of Brahman. So, and to justify this particular point, he quotes from Vishnu Purana. प्रोच्यते परमेशो यो यः शुद्ध्योऽपि उपचारतः प्रसीदतु स नो विष्णुर आत्मा यः सर्वदेहिनां. He who, although only one, is figuratively called the Lord of Goddess Lakshmi, and who is the supreme soul of all embodied beings, may that Lord Vishnu be pleased upon us. It is also heard from the Skanda Purana. Aparam tvaksharam vyasa prakritir jada rupini Shri para prakriti prokta chetana Vishnu samshraya. The inferior imperishable energy is material nature, prakriti, in the form of dull matter, while the superior conscious energy is called Shri, whose refuge is Lord Vishnu. In the Gih Stotra of the Skanda Purana, it is said, Saraswatim namasyami chetanam hridi samsthitam keshavasya priyam devim shuklam kshema pradam nityam. I offer respectful obeisances to Goddess Saraswati, who is intelligence established within the heart, who is Lord Keshava's beloved, the spotless and eternal giver of happiness. So with these references, Srila Radha Damodar Goswami is saying that Goddess Lakshmi and Saraswati are actually eternally the spiritual consorts of the Lord. So therefore there is this, when Shruti is speaking about the wife of Lord Vishnu, obeising Lord Govinda, the husband of Lakshmi, and so on, and here also Shri Chate Lakshmischa Patnyau, so they are wives of the Lord. It actually makes sense. And also one interesting point to note here is that these references are from the Shrutis, Shukla Yajurveda, then from Atharva Veda, Gopal Tapani Upanishad, then again Gopal Tapani Upanishad, Ram Tapani Upanishad. But then to support his point, what he gives quotations from the Puranas, Vishnu Purana, Skanda Purana, again from Skanda Purana, like that. So we also saw, I think during the introduction part, that the Puranas are actually commentaries on the Vedanta literatures only. So whatever statements are being made in the Shruti, in the Vedic literatures, in the Upanishads and Vedanta Sutra, they can actually be corroborated or clarified, or they can be completed. The argument can be completed and established through the Puranas also. So in a very subtle way, the author here, Sri Radha Damodar Goswami, is making that point that not only in the Shrutis it is mentioned, but even in the Puranas these points have been confirmed. So therefore the Lord's wives are actually his eternal spiritual energies. And it says, in this way the objection raised above has been refuted. Now in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 19, Text 6, it's mentioned, Vishnu Patni Mahamaye Mahapurusha Lakshane Priyetha me Mahabhage Lokamatar Namostute. After profusely offering obeisances unto Lord Vishnu, the devotee should offer respectful obeisances unto Mother Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune, and pray as follows. O wife of Lord Vishnu, O internal energy of Lord Vishnu, you are as good as Lord Vishnu himself, for you have all of his qualities and opulences. Right? So she has all of his qualities and opulences. O goddess of fortune, please be kind to me. O mother of the entire world, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. In purport, Srila Prabhupada writes, the Lord has multifarious potencies. Parasa Shakti Vividhaiva Shruyate. Since Mother Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune, is the Lord's very precious potency, she is addressed here as Mahamaya. The word Maya means Shakti. Lord Vishnu, the Supreme, cannot exhibit his power everywhere without his principal energy. It is said, Shakti, Shaktiman, Abheda. The power and the powerful are identical. Therefore, Mother Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune, is the constant companion of Lord Vishnu. They remain together constantly. One cannot keep Lakshmi in one's home without Lord Vishnu. To think that one can do so is very dangerous. To keep Lakshmi or the riches of the Lord without the service of the Lord is always dangerous, for then Lakshmi becomes the illusory energy. With Lord Vishnu, however, Lakshmi is the spiritual energy. Right? This is clear. In the same chapter, this I think 12th verse, it's mentioned, Tasya Adhishvara Sakshat Tvam Eva Purusha Paraha Tvam Sarva Yajya Ijyeyam Kriyeyam Phalabhug Bhavan. My Lord, you are the master of energy and therefore you are the supreme person. You are sacrifice, yajna personified. Lakshmi, the embodiment of spiritual activities, is the original form of worship offered unto you, whereas you are the enjoyer of all sacrifices. Right? So these quotations basically prove that Lakshmi is the spiritual potency of the Lord, and actually there is no difference between Lakshmi and Lord Vishnu. And we'll also see that Lakshmi, the name Lakshmi will be used, or rather Lakshmi will be elaborated upon in this work, primarily because we are discussing about Ishvara and we are establishing that Lord Vishnu is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now what is the source of Lord Vishnu? That discussion will come later at the end of this chapter. But because we are talking about Lord Vishnu's supremacy, we are talking about Lord Vishnu's eternal spiritual consorts also. Now there are some additional readings which we can do. So I have not included here because that will divert us a little bit from the topic. These two verses, Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Leela, chapter 5, 27-28, and Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, chapter 39, text 55, they speak about various other potencies of the Lord also, like Shri Shakti, Bhu Shakti, Neela Shakti, then Kanti, and so on. So there are 10 Shaktis, other different Shaktis also of the Lord, and elaborations about those aspects are given, and it's also mentioned that these Shaktis are also eternal spiritual potencies of the Lord. So these two additional readings can be done. And then this is very important, in Chaitanya Bhagavat, Adi Khanda, chapter 14, text 104, there is this long commentary, like almost 5 to 6 pages of commentary by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, where he elaborates on the concept of Lakshmi Devi and how she is the eternal consort of the Lord and how they are spiritually the same. So again, I have not included here for the sake of saving time, but these can be referred to and read. Now, the impersonalists make another argument. Okay, so they say, someone may argue, again, it is stated in the Shruti sentence, Neha Nanasti Kinchana, that Brahman is devoid of attributes. Right? So again, he is making that statement. So why is he making that statement? So, his point now here is that, okay, the spiritual energies of the Lord are to be considered as the same as the Lord, but then within that also we see gradations. We see that Brahman is supreme, and here all the references that have been presented there, Saraswati or Lakshmi is actually subordinate to the Lord, and we also see in other statements of the scriptures that within the energies of the Lord also, when we speak about Lakshmi, Saraswati and other energies, we say Lakshmi is the source of all the other Shaktis as well. So now we are actually getting into all types of gradations within Brahman, although the Shruti statements very clearly state that Neha Nanasti Kinchana. There is actually no differentiation within Brahman. The actual meaning itself says that within the Supreme Brahman, there is no differentiation whatsoever. That is what Neha Nanasti Kinchana means. But then, at one point, we are saying that the Lord has attributes, qualities accepted through the concept of Vishesha, fine. Then there are different forms of the Lord also, okay, they are also same. Then we are saying there are wives of the Lord also, so we are saying there is a male, there is a female. And then within that also, then there are different gradations. So when we are speaking about Lakshmi, she is actually not of the same form. So we say there is Shakti and there is Shaktiman also. So the Lakshmi and Saraswati, they are Shaktis, and then there is Shaktiman, one who possesses that Shakti. Their forms are different, their qualities apparently seem to be different. One is a male, the others are female, and within that female form, within the Shakti also, then there are so many other differences. So how can we accommodate all these differences within Brahman? So that is another argument that is being presented. So Srila Radha Damodar Goswami responds and he says, it is not so. For whatever Kinchana exists, Asti, within Brahman, Iha is not different but is inherent to the Swarupa of Brahman. Right? So this is how it is to be understood. Neha Nanasti Kinchana does not directly mean that within Brahman he does not have any attributes at all, he does not have any qualities at all. Whatever exists, Kinchana Asti, whatever is existing within Brahman, that is non-different, Nana, from the Swarupa of Brahman. That is how it is to be understood. So although there are varieties within Brahman, but they are non-different from him. And this is to be understood through this Vishesha. So this Vishesha concept is not to be limited only to the Lord's qualities or only to the Lord's form. but it should be extended to the Lord's energies and gradations within those energies also. So since Vishesha is understood to exist within the Supreme, this is also confirmed by the evidence of the text Shrishchate Lakshmischa. It must be considered that Goddess Gi, Saraswati, is another form of Goddess Lakshmi, for in the Vishnu Purana, the former is described as an attribute of the latter. Sandhya Ratri Prabha Bhutir Medha Shraddha Saraswati. O Goddess Lakshmi, you yourself are day, Prabha, night, Ratri, and the junctures, Sandhya. You are power, Bhuti, intelligence, Medha, faith, Shraddha, and speech, Saraswati, personified. It is further said, Hladni Sandhini Samvit Tvai Eka Sarva Samshraye Hladtapakari Mishra Tvai no Guna Varjite. So again from Vishnu Purana, one single energy in the form of Hladni, Sandhini and Samvit exists within you, the resting place of everything. But the energy that causes mundane joy, distress and a mixture of both does not exist in you, who are untainted by the modes of nature. So now a gradually explanation is being made, and it is said that Saraswati is another form of Lakshmi, although it is sometimes mentioned that in the Vishnu Purana also it's mentioned the former, which means Saraswati, is described as an attribute of the later, but still within Lakshmi and Saraswati also there is actually no difference. So although there are gradations, just like in the Supreme Lord, when we are discussing about the form of Lord Vishnu, we discussed that there are these three forms were mentioned in this work: 800 form, 400 form, 200 form, and then it is mentioned that the 200 form is best because, or it is more superior to both the other two forms, 800 and 400 forms, although there is absolutely no difference between them whatsoever, but still there is gradation on the basis of the potencies that they exhibit. Correct. So similarly, within the energies of the Lord also, there is gradation in terms of the activities that they perform. So Saraswati, especially in this particular case, Saraswati means knowledge, one who gives knowledge, and Lakshmi is the one who gives pleasure to the Lord. So knowledge always runs after happiness. So we'll see even in our day-to-day activities, so we actually acquire knowledge so that we can employ that knowledge to attain happiness. Right? Children go to school, they study and do all that. We're talking in a very mundane sense now. When they go to school, they study, or go to Gurukula, study, they learn. And after learning, that knowledge has to be employed so that one can attain happiness. We discussed about Sambandha, Abhideya and Prayojana, right? Sambandha is what? Sambandha is acquiring knowledge. And when the knowledge is applied, is implemented in our life through the process of Abhideya, then Prayojana is basically happiness, correct? The bliss, the spiritual bliss. And we also saw Sambandha, Abhideya, Prayojana is applicable in all the levels, on the most mundane spheres also, at the same time at the topmost spiritual level as well. So knowledge always is aspiring for happiness. So we can say that happiness or the bliss, the experience of bliss of the Lord as well as the living entities is supermost or topmost when in comparison to knowledge. Knowledge alone does not satisfy, but knowledge is actually supposed to lead one to that stage of happiness. So in that sense, when we are speaking about the energies of the Lord as Saraswati and Lakshmi as given in Vishnu Purana, although there is no difference between these two, but then knowledge, because knowledge is always after happiness, so therefore Saraswati is subordinate to Lakshmi in that sense. Okay, so there is this concept of Vishesha applicable within the energies of the Lord also. So there is Vishesha between in the personality of the Lord and his attributes, his qualities. At the same time, Vishesha has to be understood when we are thinking about gradations between the energies of the Lord also. But at the same time, as proved in the previous section, like the section that we started with today, these energies are actually non-different from the Lord. So there is the Supreme Lord, then his energies are there, they are non-different from each other, and within those energies also there are gradations, and within those gradations can also be understood through the concept of Vishesha. So it's applicable, the Vishesha is applicable to both the Shakti as well as Shaktiman. So that is what is to be understood. And this particular verse is quoted from Vishnu Purana, Hladini Sandhini Samvit, to prove the point that although the spiritual potency, the internal potency of the Lord has these three features, they are actually non-different. So one single energy So it is one single energy, but in the form of Hladini, Sandhini and Samvit exists within you. So this is not three different energies. It's one single energy, but then manifested in three different ways. It's similar to how the absolute truth is defined in three different phases: Brahman, Paramatma and Bhagavan. Absolute truth is one, it's Advaya. Vadanti tat tattvavidas tattvam yad jnanam advayam. So absolute truth is one. So there is no Brahman absolute truth, which is different from Paramatma absolute truth, which is different from Bhagavan absolute truth. No. Absolute truth is one, but then it's realized in these three features based upon the attributes and qualities which they manifest. So Brahman is impersonal, only light is there. It's conscious but impersonal. Then Paramatma, he interacts with the material world. Then Bhagavan, he manifests his full potency. So similarly, there is only one single energy of the Lord, but then this energy manifests itself in these three different ways: Hladini, Sandhini and Samvit. And it's mentioned that it's the Lord who is the resting place of everything, but the energy that causes mundane joy, distress and a mixture of both does not exist in you, who are untainted by the modes of nature. So although these three spiritual potencies exist within the Lord, but then there is this material energy also which causes mundane joy and distress and a mixture of both. But then these two actually does not exist in the personality of the Lord. Okay, so how to understand that? Now we will see this reference from Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Leela chapter 4, text 62. It's mentioned, Anandamshe Hladini, Sadamshe Sandhini, Chidamshe Samvit, Yare Jnara Kari Mani. Hladini is this aspect of bliss, Sandhini of eternal existence, and Samvit of cognizance, which is also accepted as knowledge. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes, in his thesis, Bhagavad Sandarbha, text 103, Srila Jiva Goswami explains the potencies of the Lord as follows. The transcendental potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead by which he maintains his existence is called Sandhini. The transcendental potency by which he knows himself and causes others to know him is called Samvit. The transcendental potency by which he possesses transcendental bliss and causes his devotees to have bliss is called Hladini. The total exhibition of these potencies is called Vishuddha Sattva. And this platform of spiritual variegatedness is displayed even in the material world when the Lord appears here. So when the Lord appears here, he comes along with his potency, Sandhini, Samvit and Hladini. The pastimes and manifestations of the Lord in the material world are therefore not at all material, they belong to the pure transcendental state. The Bhagavad Gita confirms that anyone who understands the transcendental nature of the Lord's appearance, activities and disappearance becomes eligible for freedom from material bondage upon quitting the present material tabernacle. He can enter the spiritual kingdom to associate with the Supreme Personality of Godhead and reciprocate the Hladini potency in transactions between him and the Lord. So this is talking about the Jiva who can enter the spiritual kingdom to associate with the Supreme Personality of Godhead and reciprocate the Hladini potency, the bliss-giving potency. He can reciprocate with that bliss-giving potency of the Lord in transactions between him and the Lord, participate in his pastimes. Vishuddha Sattva is therefore the proper atmosphere in which to experience the personality of Godhead and his transcendental pastimes. Spiritual variegatedness is eternally independent of all material conditions and is non-different from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, both being absolute. The Lord and his devotees simultaneously perceive the Hladini potency directly by the power of the Samvit potency. Right? Samvit potency is knowledge-giving potency. So when a devotee gains knowledge, then he is able to situate himself in the pastimes of the Lord and perceive the Hladini potency. And this is what we have been discussing. Right? When we are talking about Vedanta Syamantaka, we are discussing this book, this knowledge must be clear. We also saw that if Sambandha Gyan is not proper, then there is no way one can perform Abhidheya properly and Prayojana will not be achieved. So therefore knowledge first is required. Sambandha Gyan must be proper. And if Sambandha Gyan is not proper, then one will get diverted from the actual spiritual practice. So therefore, the Lord and his devotees simultaneously perceive the Hladini potency directly by the power of the Samvit potency. So even to experience, even to perceive the bliss, one must be conscious. So Samvit has two aspects. One is acquiring knowledge. So spiritual knowledge is acquired through the Samvit potency of the Lord. So if we have to know about Krishna, his energies, when we are studying Shastra, Srila Prabhupada's books, we are actually taking shelter of the internal potency of the Lord, but specifically the Samvit potency to gain knowledge of the Lord. And when by taking shelter of the Samvit potency, we experience happiness and bliss. Now, when the Goswamis, they are writing their works, they are expounding on Shastra, they are speaking about Krishna's pastimes and all, everything has this basis on knowledge, on referring to different scriptures, writing and so on. But then when a pure devotee reads these works, then he experiences happiness. Correct? So, through the power of the Samvit potency, one is able to experience happiness and bliss, which is the Hladini potency of the Lord. Although all these, and he situates himself in the eternal realm of the Lord. So, that is the Sandhini potency. So, when it is said Sat, Chit and Ananda, Sat is the Sandhini potency, Chit is Samvit potency, and Ananda is your Hladini potency. So, the Lord is Sat Chit Ananda Vigraha. So, his form is made of his internal potency, which is a combination or which can be categorized as Sat, which is Sandhini, Chit as Samvit, and Hladini as his bliss, Ananda. And the living entity is also Satchit Ananda. His Swarupa is also Satchit Ananda only, but in a limited realm, because he is dependent on these potencies of the Lord. So, therefore, the Lord, for his eternal situation, to situate himself on an eternal platform, he takes shelter of the Sandhini potency of the Lord. Then to acquire knowledge about the Lord, he has to take shelter of the Samvit potency of the Lord. And when he experiences bliss in association with the Lord, involving himself with the pastimes of the Lord, then that bliss comes from the Hladini potency of the Lord. Okay, so that is what is remembered. So, the living entity cannot actually interact with the Lord without taking shelter of his internal potency. That is why in Krishna also says in Bhagavad Gita, Mahatmanastu Mam Partha, Deivim Prakriti Mashritaha. This Devi Prakriti is what we are talking about. This is the Samvit, Sandhini and Hladini potency of the Lord. So, we'll continue. Srila Prabhupada writes, above all these mundane qualitative manifestations is Vishuddha Sattva. When it is predominated by the Sandhini potency, it is perceivable as the existence of all that be. When predominated by the Samvit potency, it is perceived as knowledge in transcendence. And when predominated by the Hladini potency, it is perceived as the most confidential love of Godhead. Right? It's clear. Vishuddha Sattva, the simultaneous manifestation of these three in one, is the main feature of the kingdom of God. The absolute truth is therefore the substance of reality, eternally manifest in three energies. The manifestation of the internal energy of the Lord is the inconceivably variegated spiritual world. The manifestation of the material energy comprises the living entities, and the manifestation of the external energy is the material cosmos. Therefore, the absolute truth includes these four principles: the Supreme Personality of Godhead Himself, His internal energy, His marginal energy, and His external energy. Each of these divisions of the internal potency, the Sandhini, Samvit and Hladini energies, influences one of the external potencies by which the conditioned souls are conducted. Such influence manifests the three qualitative modes of material nature, proving definitely that the living entities, the marginal potency, are eternally servitors of the Lord and are therefore controlled by either the internal or the external potency. So, what does it mean is that even within this material world, there is a reflection of these potencies. So, the creation, the manifestation of the cosmic universe is carried out by the reflection of the Sandhini potency. Okay. Then acquiring mundane knowledge about this material world, engaging in materialistic activities, gathering material knowledge and so on is basically a perverted reflection of the Samvit potency which is inherent within us. And experiencing the so-called happiness of this material world is that perverted reflection of the Hladini aspect of the internal potency. So, external potency is actually nothing but a shadow or a reflection. I will not say shadow, but reflection of the internal potency of the Lord. So, when the living entity enters within this material world, he is experiencing. How does he experience happiness here? Unless and until this reflection of Hladini potency is not there. So, it is there, but then it is temporary. The cosmic manifestation, there is a sense of existence within this material world because the Sandhini potency in its perverted form is applicable here. Similarly, the quest to acquire knowledge, there are so many ways in which people acquire knowledge about finance, this, that and all, scientists, so many other things. That is because inherently the living entity has this Samvit potency. He wants to associate with the Samvit potency, but because he wants to be separate from the Lord, the Samvit potency is pervertly reflected within this material world, and he has this tendency to acquire knowledge. He has a tendency to exist, tendency to acquire knowledge, tendency to become happy. All these are basically perverted reflections of the internal potency of the Lord. Okay. So within this material world also, there is this influence of these potencies of the Lord. In Chaitanya Charitamrita Adilila, chapter 4, text 63, it's mentioned, Hladini Sandhini Samvit, Tvai Eka Sarva Samsthito, Hlada Tapakari Mishra, Tvai Na Guna Varjite. No, I think we discussed this already, isn't it? Yeah, so we already discussed that. So, Sri Radha Goswami continues, this threefold energy of Brahman is called superior, para. The one whose function is predominantly knowledge, Samvit, is Gi, and the one whose function is predominantly bliss is called Lakshmi. Out of the two, Gi should be understood as following Lakshmi, for it is well known that knowledge runs after happiness. So, we already discussed that. So, there is one. Okay, the threefold energy of the Brahman is called superior. So, it's only one unit, but then there are different manifestations within that. So, therefore, the argument that there are gradations within the energies also has been removed, because these energies have different aspects. Just like the Lord's form, he exhibits different potencies based on his pastimes. The energies also, they also exhibit specific qualities, and therefore, there are gradations amongst them. The next section, he says that Lord's consorts actually do not belong to the category of Jiva. He writes, Lakshmi's non-difference from the Supreme Lord and her being similarly all-pervading are also mentioned in the Vishnu Purana. Nityeva sa Jaganmata Vishnor Shrir Anapayini Yatha Sarvagato Vishnus Tathe Veyam Dvijottama. Shri, Lord Vishnu's wife, is eternal, inseparable, and the mother of the universe. Just as Lord Vishnu is all-pervasive, so is she, O best of the twice born. Srila Prabhupada in Canto 6, Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 6, chapter 19, text 13 purport, he writes, according to Madhvacharya, there are two tattvas or factors, right? Dvaita, two things. One is independent and the other is dependent. The first tattva is the Supreme Lord Vishnu, and the second is the Jiva tattva. Lakshmi Devi, being dependent on Lord Vishnu, is sometimes counted among the Jivas. The Gaudiya Vaishnavas, however, describe Lakshmi Devi in accordance with the following two verses from the Prameya Ratnavali of Baladeva Vidyabhushan. The first verse is a quotation from the Vishnu Purana, both of them. So it goes, Nityeva sa Jaganmata, the same verse which we discussed now has been quoted. And the translation goes, O best of the Brahmanas, Lakshmiji is the constant companion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vishnu, and therefore she is called Anapayini. She is the mother of all creation. As Lord Vishnu is all-pervading, his spiritual potency, Mother Lakshmi, is also all-pervading. Lord Vishnu has three principal potencies, internal, external, and marginal. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has accepted Parashakti, the spiritual energy of the Lord, as being identical with the Lord. Thus, she is also included in the independent Vishnu Tattva. In the Kantimala commentary on Prameya Ratnavali, there is this statement. Although some authoritative Vaishnava disciplic successions count the goddess of fortune among the ever-liberated living entities, Jivas, in Vaikuntha, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in accordance with the statement in the Vishnu Purana, has described Lakshmi as being identical with the Vishnu Tattva. Which means Shakti is not different. Shakti, Shaktiman, Abheda. So therefore she is identical with Vishnu Tattva. The correct conclusion is that the descriptions of Lakshmi as being different from Vishnu are stated when an eternally liberated living entity is imbued with the quality of Lakshmi. So this is the harmonization. So even Sri Vaishnavas, I think within the sections, the Tengalais say that Lakshmi is a Jiva, and the Vadagalais say that Lakshmi is not a Jiva. She is as eternal and on the same level as the Lord. But the Tengalai sect, they say that no, Lakshmi is actually a Jiva and she is different from the Lord, just like we are. Eternal, liberated, superior, the topmost Jiva, but still Jiva Tattva only. And here, Madhvacharya also, it seems that he is quoted like this. But when it is said like this, and they also have their references from the Shastra for justifying that particular claim, but Srila Prabhupada harmonizes everything. He says the correct conclusion is that the descriptions of Lakshmi as being different from Vishnu are stated when an eternally liberated living entity is imbued with the quality of Lakshmi. They do not pertain to Mother Lakshmi, the eternal consort of Lord Vishnu. In Hinduism also, there is this prevalence of worshipping the 9 different forms of Lakshmi, Dhana Lakshmi, then Vidya Lakshmi. I don't know, but there are different forms. So these Lakshmis are actually living entities. So when people are worshipping, Diwali is going to come, people are going to worship Lakshmi. When they worship Lakshmi separately from Lord Vishnu, they're actually worshipping an extension, the Jiva called Dhana Lakshmi, who is actually not the eternal consort of the Lord. After material wealth, so we also saw that reference. So when Lakshmi is worshipped without Lord Vishnu, then she takes the form of illusory energy. So she gives all this material opulences, but she will not give devotion to the Lord. But one who takes shelter of Mother Lakshmi, understanding this, that she is non-different from the Lord himself, she is the eternal energy, the spiritual energy of the Lord, and by taking shelter to her, one can please the Lord, then one can make progress in the spiritual realm. Only by worshipping Lakshmi, without Lord Vishnu, without this proper understanding, without this Sambandha Gyan, one will not be able to attain any spiritual elevation, or will not make progress in spiritual life. Therefore, it's mentioned, if both were different, such all pervasiveness would lead to a flawed conclusion. Right? All pervasiveness means only Brahman is all pervasive. Sarvam khalvam idam Brahma. And when in Shastra it says Lakshmi is also all pervasive, there cannot be two Brahman, there cannot be two different entities. There's only one. Brahman is only one. So the all pervasiveness would lead to a flawed conclusion if both were different. So therefore Lakshmi is actually non-different from Lord Vishnu. She is the energy of the Lord. Lakshmi has also unlimited qualities like the Lord. So further references are there, pramanas are there. In this way, the theory that Lakshmi belongs to the category of Jiva has been refuted. In the Vishnu Purana, it is described that like Lord Hari, Lakshmi has unlimited qualities. Nate varnayitum shakta gunan jihvapi vedasaha prasida devi padmakshi masmam tyakshi kadachana. O lotus-eyed goddess, even Brahma's tongue is not able to describe your qualities. Be pleased upon us and never abandon us. In teachings of Lord Chaitanya, in introduction, Srila Prabhupada is very clear when he writes about this. He says, because we have no experience with spiritual energy, we think that Brahma's birth from the navel of Vishnu is simply a fictional story. We are not aware that spiritual energy is so powerful that it can do anything and everything. Material energy is dependent on certain laws, but spiritual energy is fully independent, just like the Lord. Right? Okay. So some of those transcendental qualities, such as being the giver of liberation and bringing Lord Hari under her control, are mentioned in the Vishnu Purana. So it's a long text, we'll read the translation. O goddess, this is referring to Mother Lakshmi, you are spiritual knowledge personified and the giver of the fruits of liberation. So she can also give liberation. Who else besides you sits on the lap of Lord Vishnu, the God of gods, whose body is the embodiment of all sacrifices and is meditated upon by the yogis? O goddess, having been given up by you, the 3 worlds were almost completely annihilated, but they have now become prosperous. O virtuous one, by your glance, men always obtain wives, sons, houses, friends, grains, wealth, and so on. O goddess, bodily health, opulence, happiness, and destruction of enemies are not difficult to attain for those who have received your glance. Qualities like goodness, truthfulness, cleanliness, and virtue immediately desert those who have been abandoned by you. O spotless one, all the devoid of good qualities, those who are glanced upon by you immediately acquire all qualities such as virtue and obtain riches and a noble family. A person glanced upon by you is praiseworthy, virtuous, fortunate, well-born, intelligent, brave, and heroic. O Mother of the Universe, O Beloved of Vishnu, if you are averse to someone, virtue and all other qualities of such a person immediately becomes null and void. So even within this material world, if one has to acquire all these different qualities, one needs to have the grace of Lakshmi. And this verse is primarily quoted that Lakshmi is spiritual knowledge personified and she is the giver of liberation also. At several places in the Shastra, it's mentioned that Vishnu is the one who gives liberation, but Mother Lakshmi can also give liberation. And Lakshmi has unlimited forms, just like the Lord. So these are different references that is given by the author to prove that Lakshmi is actually non-different from Lord Vishnu. So the consorts of the Lord, the spiritual energy of the Lord is actually very inherent to the Lord. In the Vishnu Purana, it is also said that like Lord Vishnu, Lakshmi also has multiple forms and follows him everywhere in a body conforming to his. Devatve Deva Deheyam Manushatve Chamanushi Vishnur Dehanurupam Vai Karot Eshat Tanum. When Lord Vishnu appears in the form of a heavenly denizen, Goddess Lakshmi appears in the form of a heavenly denizen, means a demigod. When he appears in a human form, she appears in a human form. She shapes her own body in conformity with the body manifested by Lord Vishnu. Right? So when Lord Vishnu appears in the form of a heavenly denizen, means there are statements in the Shastra that Indra is actually a manifestation of Vishnu. So Shachi Devi is a manifestation of Lakshmi. So I think if I remember correctly, Dhanalakshmi is actually Shachi Devi only. So when people are worshipping for mundane wealth, they are actually worshipping the wife of Indra, if I understand clearly. I don't have a reference, but I think I read that some time back. So this is what it is. So when he appears in human form as Lord Ramchandra, as Lord Krishna, then she appears in human form as Mother Sita, then Rukmini, like that. So all expansions of the Lord's consorts originate from Srimati Radharani. Then he says, amongst all Lakshmi forms, Lakshmi's original form must be considered to be Sri Radha herself. Just as amongst all the Supreme Lord's forms, Sri Krishna is himself the Lord's original form, as stated in the Purusha Bodhini Upanishad. In the middle of a Tulasi forest situated in the area of Mathura called Gokula, at the foot of a desire tree in the middle of 1,000-petaled lotus, Govinda stands on a filament amidst 8 petals. His two-handed, dark-complexioned body is dressed in yellow garments. He wears a peacock feather on his head and holds a flute and a cane in his hands. He is devoid of material qualities but full of transcendental qualities. Devoid of a material body but endowed with a spiritual body. Free from material activities but engaged in divine pastimes. At his two sides stand Sri Radhika and Sri Chandravali. Sri Radhika's expansions are personified energies such as Lakshmi and Durga. So this is a very definitive statement from an Upanishad where the Lord's form is also clarified and the Lord's Shakti is also very elaborately described. It's very clear, no? He is devoid of material qualities but full of transcendental qualities. He is devoid of material body but endowed with a spiritual body. It is also confirmed by the words of Shukdeva in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 4, Text 14. Nirasta samyati shayena radhasa swadhamani brahmani ramsyate namaha. Obeisances unto the Supreme Lord who sports in his own abode in the spiritual sky along with Sri Radha who is devoid of any equal or superior. Right? So this Radhasa is being interpreted here as Sri Radha. So, as far as I understand, it's only Srila Radha Damodar Goswami who interprets this verse like this. Srila Prabhupada and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and other commentators, they did not interpret this verse, but actually it makes sense. So just as I said, no, when Bhagavatam, there each and every shloka and each and every syllable can be interpreted in many different ways. Similarly, this particular section, when Radhasa is mentioned, he interprets it like this. It is not wrong. So obeisance of the Supreme Lord who sports in his own abode, Swadhamani, Brahmani, Ramsyate, who sports, and Swadhamani in his own abode, Brahmani refers to the Supreme Lord, right? And to that Supreme Lord we pay our humble obeisances. Okay, next. Furthermore, it is stated in the narration of the Radhika mantra in the Brihad Gautamiya Tantra. Devi Krishna Mayi Prokta Radhika Paradevata Sarva Lakshmi Mayi Sarva Kanti Sammohini Para. The Supreme Goddess called Radhika, the superior energy, is Krishna's worshipper and is non-different from him. All goddesses of fortune are her expansions, and her desire to worship Krishna is like that of all of them combined. She is always pleasing Krishna. So, going down in the same Brihad Gautami Tantra, it's mentioned, I am actually the three principles, cause, sattva, effect, tattva, and that which is beyond both. And my beloved Radhika also exists in the form of these three principles. I am beyond the material energy and she is my own energy. In Purusha Bodhini Upanishad, again it's mentioned, Sri Radhika is his eternal original nature, devoid of any material quality. She is adorned with all ornaments, joyful and more beautiful than all beauty. In Rigveda Parishishta, it's mentioned, Radhaya Madhavo Devo Madhavenaiva Radhika Vibhrajante Janeshva. Surrounded by the inhabitants of Vraja in all directions, Madhava, the supreme god, shines in the company of Radha, and Radha shines in the company of Madhava. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Leela, it's chapter 8, text 183, it's mentioned, Yandra Saubhagya Guna Vanchi Satyabhama, Yandra Thai Kala Vilasa Shikhe Vrajarama, Yandra Saundaryadi Gune Vanche Lakshmi Parvati, Yandra Pati Vrata Dharma Vanche Arundhati. Even Satyabhama, so Yandra, all this Yandra actually refers to Srimati Radharani. Even Satyabhama, one of the queens of Sri Krishna, desires the fortunate position and excellent qualities of Srimati Radharani. All the gopis learn the art of dressing from Srimati Radharani, and even the goddess of fortune, Lakshmi, and the wife of Lord Shiva, Parvati, desire her beauty and qualities. Indeed, Arundhati, the celebrated chaste wife of Vasishtha, also wants to imitate the chastity and religious principles of Srimati Radharani. In Krishnamrita chapter 52, Srila Prabhupada writes, just as Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead, Vasudeva, Rukmini is the supreme goddess of fortune, Mahalakshmi. According to the authority of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the expansion of Krishna and that of Srimati Radharani are simultaneous. Krishna expands himself into various Vishnu Tattva forms, and Srimati Radharani expands herself into various Shakti Tattva forms by her internal potency as multiforms of the goddess of fortune. So all the expansions in the spiritual planets, starting from Vaikuntha planets and Ayodhya, Mathura, wherever we see the consorts of the Lord, they are actually expansions of Srimati Radharani. And a departure lecture given by Srila Prabhupada on 12th of March 1975 in London, he says, Shri means goddess of fortune, Lakshmi. Krishna is always associated with Lakshmi. Srimati Radharani is the original goddess of fortune. Right? So the Shakti Tattva is clarified. So concepts of the Lord, Srimati Radharani is the supreme. And among the Ishwaras, who is the subject matter of this particular chapter, Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead. So it is also said in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Ete Chamsha Kalah Pumsa Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. These are either plenary portions or portions of a plenary portion of the Supreme Person Krishna, of the Supreme Person. Krishna, however, is the Supreme Lord Himself. Ashtamastu Tayorasid Swayam Eva Hari Kila. So Swayam Eva is mentioned. So the eighth son of Vasudeva and Devaki was Lord Hari Himself. Now with respect to this point, there can be so many other references from Srila Prabhupada's work, but then there can be so many that I have not included even one, because as followers of Srila Prabhupada, Krishna Conscious Movement, they read Prabhupada's books and then you know that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Okay, so that's it. So with this, we end this chapter of Vedanta Syamantaka, ascertaining the nature of the Supreme Lord of all. So yeah, so this is our discussion of Ishvara. So Shri Radha Damodar Goswami has given all these elaborate points to establish finally that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead and Radharani is actually non-different from. So they are the absolute truth. Next, we are going to speak about the Jiva. Okay. Till now, if we see, we have discussed about Ishvara and his energies. But then there are other two energies of the Lord also. There is this marginal energy, Tatastha Shakti, and then there is this external energy. Okay, so if those two are also clarified, because we saw itself, and Radha Damodar Goswami writes that the Lord is there and then he has these three principal Shaktis, Vishnu Shakti, Paraprokta, right, that we saw. So there are three Shaktis. The internal potency of the Lord has been discussed in this chapter itself. The marginal potency will be discussed in the next chapter, that is chapter 3, the third Kiran, Tritiya Kiran, and the fourth chapter we are going to speak about Prakriti, or the material energy of the Lord. So once these three are clarified, we have understood who Ishvara is, and his three energies are also understood in proper context in relationship to the Lord, then our Sambandha Gyan is proper and perfect to make progress in spiritual life. So that's the understanding. And after that, Kala and Karma is there because that is pertinent to us living entities who are within this material world, and how these three energies, the internal potency of the Lord, the external potency of the Lord, and the living entity, the marginal potency of the Lord, they interact due to the influence of Kala, and they get entangled due to that influence in the process of karma. So if we can get out of all these things, we understand these five aspects as to who Ishvara is, then Jiva, then Prakriti, then Kala and Karma, then it gives us all the tools necessary for us to have perfect understanding of these aspects and to work in such a way that we can come out of this entanglement and be situated in our eternal constitutional position. So that's the entire thought process behind studying this work. Right, so we'll stop. We'll have class next Tuesday or coming Tuesday, next week, and we'll start with the new chapter, third chapter on Jivas. So we have any question? You can take one. Yes, bro.
Can you explain where Lord Krishna is in between of Chandravali and Radharani? Could explain Chandravali relationship with Radharani? What exactly the relationship between the two?
Okay, so the question is when we were discussing about in the Purusha Bodhini Upanishad, it's mentioned that at his two sides stand Sri Radhika and Sri Chandravali. Sri Radhika's expansions are personified energies such as Lakshmi and Durga. Okay, so two sides. One side is Radhika, one side is Chandravali, and it is mentioned in Shastra also. Radhika stands in the left hand side, Chandravali at right hand side. I don't know much about this, but it is mentioned that the mood of, there are a set of gopis on the side of Chandravali, there are a set of gopis on the side of Radhika also, and the mood of these two are different, and they help in Krishna's pastimes in experiencing those different rasas. As Gaudiya Vaishnavas, we are followers of Srimati Radharani, but then there is this group of Chandravali also, and the mood is different. So each parampara has its specific mood of approaching Krishna's pastimes. Our mood is that of following Srimati Radharani, and Chandravali is also there. We also find some writings of the Goswamis where Radharani is elevated in comparison to Chandravali. And I don't remember, but I think even Chandravali is one of the expansions of Radharani only. I'm not 100% sure of that, so please don't take my word on this. But if I remember correctly, I think I read somewhere. So everything actually, she is the original Shakti. She is the original Shakti, and everybody else is an expansion, and all the expansions have their own moods, own relationship with the Lord. They have the different rasas to exchange with the Lord. So that way, although there are these two camps, it seems when we read the pastimes, then in Vrindavan it seems Radharani's camp is opposed to Chandravali's camp, like that it comes, but all are transcendental for us. So, and we have a specific mode that we follow. So yeah, that much only I know actually. Yes. Yes, bro.
Secondly, you talked about as the Lord expands himself in form.
Yes.
Similarly, his consort also expands.
Yes.
So just wondering, in case of, it's a mundane thought,
Yeah.
that as Lord Krishna expands to experience with Bhagavan in the form of a half-life.
Yes.
But we see the Lakshmi, Lakshmi, the family.
Yeah, Lakshmi only.
Like
Yes.
any explanation?
Yeah. Okay. The question is that we discussed that when the Lord expands into multifarious forms, his eternal consort Radharani also expands into multifarious forms. So when it comes to Nrsimhadev is half man, half lion form he acquires, but Lakshmi Devi is still Lakshmi Devi only, so she is not in that same form. The way we understand is whatever pleases the Lord. So Lakshmi assumes that form which pleases the Lord, which gives him happiness. That's her service. So she does not have to assume the same form. It's more reciprocation that is important at this point, not assuming the same form and same qualities. Obviously there cannot be same qualities, or else it's not compatible. But still, the point is that whatever pleases the Lord. So we have Lakshmi Narsimha. So Lakshmi is there in her form and she gives pleasure to Lord Narsimha. So that way, it has to be understood. So whatever pleases the Lord. And also, feminine form is best, not other forms. So she expands as feminine form only to give pleasure to the Lord. Not the same can be spread about Varahadev also. No, but it's a mundane calculation. You should not do that. So whatever pleases the Lord, she accepts that particular form. So that is how we should understand. Okay. Nice. Bro. Yes. 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 Why is that? Okay. So the question is that in South India we see that in some temples, or rather in many of the temples, Shiva Vaishnava temples, you see the Lord's Garbhagraha is there, but Lakshmi's is separate. So there is Perumal Sanadi and there is Tayar Sanadi. There is separate. So why is that? I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that. I'll try to find out. Okay, we'll try to find out. But yeah, we have to ask some Sri Vaishnavas why they have that kind of arrangement is there. Okay, so is it because they are worshipping Lakshmi as Jiva Tattva, that's why they have separated her from the Lord? I don't know actually. Maybe that may be a reason, but I cannot confirm, or neither I can deny. So I don't know actually. So we'll see. We have to ask some Sri Vaishnavas because there's their mode of worship. So yeah, I'm not aware of it. Sorry. Yes, Prabhu.
Madhvacharya is right to believe that Lakshmi is a Shiva Tattva.
Yeah, so Lakshmi, no, actually when Srila Prabhupada writes it here, he says that, where is it? Yeah, so when Madhvacharya is talking about these two tattvas as the Lord Vishnu and the second is Jiva Tattva, and Lakshmi Devi being dependent on Lord Vishnu sometimes counted among the Jivas. So in that sense, I think we have to take this particular statement of Srila Prabhupada into context. That's harmonization. So Madhvacharya is not saying that Lakshmi is always Jiva. Okay, so when he says that, then these are those Jivas who have the qualities, the living entities imbued with the quality of Lakshmi. But being in the same parampara, we will not go against what Madhvacharya says. So Madhvacharya indeed has said that Lakshmi is actually the eternal energy of the Lord. That is there. Yes. Okay. Yeah. So thank you so much. We'll stop here. Srila Radha Damodar Goswami ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.